May 11th, 2024, a remote village in Kungan, North Chola Province. In the darkness before dawn, orange flames were blazing against the sky. An entire house was burning to the ground. The fire spread, the roof caved in. A woman stood there, watching the flames. She made no move to put out the fire. She didn't call 119. She didn't run. She just waited there and watched as the fire swallowed the building, watched the house collapse, watched knowing that a person was burning to death inside, from beginning to end. When police arrived, they found the woman sitting near an outdoor bathroom in front of the house. She was heavily intoxicated. During questioning, she openly admitted that she had set the fire. The man who died inside was her boyfriend. They had been together for 5 years. Why did she sit there and watch her partner burn to death? Let's get into the story. The woman in our story, we will call her Suyeon. She was 43 years old at the time of the incident. Her childhood was not a happy one. Her father turned violent whenever he drank, and eventually her mother couldn't take it anymore and left. Suyeon and her youngest siblings were left behind with their father. One family member described what it was like, saying there was a lot of fighting. Getting hit was just something that happened every other day. As kids, we went hungry so many times. We really grew up starving. Growing up surrounded by violence and hunger, home was never a safe or pleasant place for Suyeon. She started drinking early. Even as an adult, she struggled to hold down a steady job or maintain stable relationships. Her situation in life was always precarious. She must have wanted someone to watch out for her, someone who would be on her side. But for a long time, she didn't really have anyone. Then in 2019, when Suyeon was in her late 30s, she met a man. He was a few years younger than her, and at first he was kind. He treated her warmly in a way that she wasn't used to. For the first time in her life, she felt like she might have someone she could really lean on. But before long, his behavior began to change. The walls started to close in. He'd tell her things like, don't talk to other people, stay home, don't go out, don't wear skirts. He tried to control everything about her. If she pushed back even slightly, he got angry. And eventually, that anger turned physical. After the first time he hit her, he apologized. He said it would never happen again. But it did happen again. Once became twice, twice became 10 times, 10 times became too many to count. The violence also kept escalating. It started with slaps, then punches to the face, then kicks, then choking. At some point, he started threatening her with a weapon. Suyeon tried to leave. She once fled to her father's house, but her boyfriend followed her there and caused a scene. According to her family, he didn't hit her at their place. He'd take her back to his place, have some drinks, and if something bothered him, that's when he'd go at her. And so Suyeon would end up back with him. She clearly couldn't run to her family, and she had nowhere else to go, no money, and no one to turn to. Suyeon had no choice but to call the police. She was trying to stay alive. Officers would show up, and her boyfriend would calm right down once they were there. The police would treat it as a couple's quarrel rather than an instance of domestic violence and close the case on the spot. After they left, she says the beatings were worse. She was receiving punishments for reporting him. But she didn't give up. Every time he hit her, she called. Every time he choked her, she called. Every time he threatened her with a weapon, she called the police. Over 5 years, Suyeon called the police 31 times, but most of those calls ended with officers telling her boyfriend to settle down and then leaving. According to Suyeon, some officers even turned on her, saying, "We told you not to come to his place. Why do you keep coming back? This is what happens." She was the victim, but she was made to feel like she was the one doing something wrong. There were even more concerning moments. In some cases where Suyeon's boyfriend was clearly the one doing the beating, the incident was logged as mutual assault. Experts say that in Korea, if the victim so much as raises a hand in response, regardless of who is the aggressor, it is automatically classified as mutual. There have been reform attempts, but as of yet, nothing has succeeded. So, abusers have learned to exploit this apparent legal loophole. They will beat someone and then say, "Go on, hit me back." They know that if it gets classified as a mutual assault, they are likely to avoid punishment, as both parties face potential prosecution. And this makes victims especially vulnerable. But that's not the only issue. Under current laws, intimate partner violence is distinct from domestic violence in that it can only be prosecuted if the victim presses charges. This gives abusers leverage to pressure their victims into dropping the case. The abuser reaches out constantly, sometimes enlisting friends and family to help, demanding, pleading with, or threatening the victim to withdraw the complaint. Sometimes that pressure is applied through physical abuse. So the system was not as helpful to Suyeon as it could have been. The police did take some steps to help her. They gave her a safety watch and increased patrols in the area. But that was about it. There was no separation order, no restraining order, no real enforcement keeping her abuser away from her. And the violence kept getting worse. At some point in 2022, Suyeon's boyfriend punched her repeatedly in the face. Her orbital bone fractured. The bone around her eye collapsed inward. Her entire face swelled severely. She was taken to the ICU. A family member described what she looked like. He's got a strong right hand, so the whole side just got destroyed. The hospital said she could suffer partial blindness. Then later they said she might lose her vision entirely. The attending physician wrote this in her medical record: orbital fracture and ocular enophthalmos, possibility of death. So she could have died. Neighbors witnessed the aftermath. Someone took photos and reported the assault to the police. And this time, her boyfriend was arrested. The court sentenced him to 6 months in prison. But those 6 months passed quickly. The moment he got out, he came looking for Suyeon again. He attacked her again. This time, he received 4 months for trespassing and refusing to leave. And the same thing followed his second release from prison. He came back, and this time it was worse. In 2023, he was arrested again on aggravated assault charges and sentenced to 1 year behind bars. The court's written opinion detailed the nature of his crimes. When she tried to leave, he became enraged, unleashed a torrent of profanity, and choked her. While choking her, he struck her face and head approximately 10 times with his fist, causing severe swelling across her entire face. On a separate occasion, following an argument, he choked her again, hit her in the head, then retrieved a weapon, pressed it against her throat, scratched her right arm, and burned 3 spots on her stomach with a lit cigarette. Just 1 year. That was the sentence for all of that. Suyeon finally felt like she could breathe. She had at least 1 year of safety. But that year went by faster than she expected. In May 2024, he got out. Just 1 week after his release, he, of course, contacted Suyeon and asked to meet. He said he wanted to apologize. She wanted to say no, but she was scared. She later told investigators she was afraid that if she refused, he might go after her father. So she went to her boyfriend's place, and that was a huge mistake. Suyeon regretted her decision the moment she arrived. There was no apology. According to court documents, as soon as he saw her, he started hitting her, blaming her for sending him to prison. It was as if he was releasing a year's worth of built-up rage, and it was worse than anything she had suffered before. He beat her until her chin split open. Then he choked her until she truly couldn't breathe. She thought she was going to die. He let go. She collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. She wanted to call the police, but he had taken her phone. She wanted to run, but her body had been beaten so badly she could barely move. Hours passed. He kept drinking, and then, drunk and exhausted, he fell asleep. He spread out a blanket on the floor and started snoring. Suyeon watched him. The same person who had just beaten her half to death was sleeping like a baby. She was swollen all over, blood running from her chin, and he was fast asleep without a care in the world. She later told investigators, "He beat me like he was going to kill me, and then just fell right asleep. That made me furious." Her eyes landed on a lighter. He'd left it out after smoking. There was a blanket right next to it. She told police, "I waited until he was asleep, and then I set the fire." It caught. At first, it was just a small flame at the edge of the blanket, and it spread slowly. He didn't wake up. He was too drunk. Suyeon walked outside. She sat down near the outdoor bathroom in front of the house. She watched the fire grow. Flames shot out the window. They reached the roof. The whole house began to burn. She didn't call 119. She didn't leave. She stayed and watched until it was over. Later, an investigator asked her, "Why didn't you report it? Why did you just sit there and watch?" She answered, "Because that fire couldn't be allowed to go out. If it had gone out, I would have been the one who died." Suyeon was arrested at the scene. When police arrived, she was heavily intoxicated. She immediately admitted to setting the fire. She didn't try to hide it. She didn't try to make excuses. Prosecutors charged her with arson, resulting in death. She wasn't charged with murder because she hadn't directly killed him. The charge was specific to causing death through arson. The first trial began. Her defense argued that she acted in self-defense. She had endured 5 years of severe abuse. That same night, she had nearly been choked to death. Her phone had been taken from her, leaving her with no way to call for help. Given all that, setting the fire was the only option she had to protect herself. But the court rejected the argument. The reasoning was that her boyfriend was asleep when she set the fire, meaning there was no active, immediate threat to her life at that moment. Without an immediate threat, the court said self-defense doesn't apply. The court also concluded that Suyeon must have harbored deep resentment from suffering years of abuse, and noted that she had been in a very agitated, emotional state from the beating earlier that night. The court used this as evidence that she had acted with the intent to kill. Her sentence was handed down, 12 years. Suyeon broke down in the courtroom. She had suffered at the hands of her boyfriend for 5 years, and she was about to suffer at the hands of the justice system for another 12. Once word got out, women's advocacy groups began to mobilize. 34 organizations across the country formed a joint task force. A new legal team was assembled. A second trial was held. The new defense team requested a psychiatric evaluation. The results showed that Suyeon was in an extremely fragile mental state due to the prolonged abuse she had suffered. The appellate court acknowledged that years of violence had left her genuinely fearing for her life. It found that she had acted according to the belief that it was the only way to end her suffering, and reduced her sentence, but not by much. Her new sentence was 10 years. But the claim of self-defense was still rejected for the same reason. Her boyfriend had been asleep, so there was no immediate threat at the time. The court also said it was difficult to conclude that killing him was the only way for her to escape his abuse. The Supreme Court upheld the appellate ruling. The 10-year sentence was final. After the ruling was finalized, critics argued that the courts had fundamentally failed to understand the dynamics of intimate partner violence. There were also concerns that the threshold for self-defense had been interpreted far too narrowly. Under current standards, self-defense requires an immediate, ongoing threat, and the response must be proportionate to what's happening in that moment. Those are called the immediacy and proportionality requirements. But intimate partner violence doesn't work that way. Even when an abuser is asleep, the victim isn't free from fear. She knows that when he wakes up, she is going to get beaten again. She knows that if she runs, he will come after her. And another troubling detail emerged during the reporting process. Suyeon's boyfriend had 3 prior convictions for assaulting Suyeon: the 2022 orbital fracture beating, the trespassing charge, and the 2023 aggravated assault. But only the 3rd conviction was presented to the court during Suyeon's trial. The other 2 court records were never submitted by the prosecution or by the defense. The orbital fracture case in particular was severe enough that hospital records noted the possibility of death. Had that been presented before the court, the outcome might have been different. The full record of the repeated and brutal history of his abuse was never put in front of a judge. Suyeon's case is just one of many. In 2025 alone, there were 16,339 reported cases of stalking and intimate partner violence in South Korea. Police requested arrest warrants in just 516 of those cases. Courts actually issued warrants in only 165. That's roughly 1% of reported cases. In other words, when a victim of intimate partner violence calls the police, there is about a 1 in 100 chance the abuser will actually be arrested. In the other 99 cases, the incident gets closed on the spot, the abuser is released, or the victim is pressured into withdrawing the complaint. There is still no specific law in South Korea addressing intimate partner violence. The domestic violence law technically covers common law couples, but is limited to family members. The stalking law focuses specifically on stalking behavior. Because there's no consensus on how broadly to define intimate partner violence, legislation is stalled. In August 2025, the coalition held a press conference in front of the presidential office and formally submitted a request for Suyeon to be included in the August 15 Liberation Day special pardon, calling it the minimum measure by which the state can acknowledge its failure. The groups asked, does it make any sense that a woman who survived horrific dating violence is serving 10 years? She called the police 31 times and was never protected. She had no choice but to set that fire to survive. The police who ignored her calls and the judges who handed down lenient sentences should be held accountable. The pardon that year was granted to over 2,000 people, mostly political figures, and Suyeon was not included. Suyeon is still in prison, serving her 10-year sentence. But the fight is not over. Advocacy groups launched a new 10,000 signature petition drive in early March 2026, with the collected signatures to be formally delivered to the presidential office, and the campaign is still active. In cases such as these, many people ask why she didn't leave, why she didn't break up with him, why she got involved with someone like that in the first place. Experts push back on that framing. They say our society as a whole has a very low awareness of the real gravity of the situation. In Korea in 2025, at least 137 women were killed by family members or partners, meaning one woman lost her life at the hands of someone they knew very well every 2 to 3 days. Every time one of these cases happens, the whole country erupts in outrage, and yet the tragedy keeps repeating. Suyeon did try to leave. She went to her father's house. He followed her. She called the police 31 times and nothing changed. The man went to prison 3 times and came out each time more dangerous than before. Did she really have a choice? What she did was a crime. There's no getting around that. But who drove her to that point? Can a society that ignored over 30 calls for help walk away from this without any accountability? That's the question I will leave with you. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.